This episode is brought to you by ChopDog. ChopDog helps grow startups and create incredible products for businesses. Visit their website, chopdog.com, to learn how they can help you achieve your vision. We all have big ideas, but very few of us ever put in the effort to make them become a reality. This is a video series where I interview inspirational people who are trying to do just that. This is Reality Makers. All right, cool. So why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are? Who's Ryan Hoover?
So I'm working at PlayHaven. We're in the mobile gaming space, and we build a platform for mobile game developers.
Awesome. So how did you get your whole start in the startup industry? Can you tell me a little bit about your background?
So actually, I worked with our CEO, our current CEO at PlayHaven, at a previous company in Portland, Oregon. So, well, to back up a little bit, I started off as an intern in Eugene, Oregon, moved to Portland at another company, and then eventually transitioned here to PlayHaven. So that was about 2.5, almost 3 years ago that I moved to San Francisco. And I found that, but even before I found PlayHaven, I knew that the city was kind of going to pull me in. I was looking around and curious, and as someone who loves tech, I pretty much knew I was going to land in San Francisco at some point, and
Yeah.
PlayHaven was that motivation.
All right, awesome. And now you're in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So is there actually a tech scene in Oregon?
Not in Eugene. Eugene's very much a college town, but in Portland, there's actually a small, growing kind of budding tech scene, some incubators there, and some co-working spaces. It's nothing like San Francisco, of course,
Okay.
but there's definitely a presence. And when I went there, when I was in Portland, I went to some of those events, and you see a lot of the same faces, which is kind of nice because you kind of build that relationship with your more tight-knit community. So it's there, but it's nothing like it is here, of course.
Yeah, down here in San Diego, we have a really small community too, and it's growing over time, and it's exciting to see it kind of blossom. And we'll see how it goes. It's fun to have this tighter knit community of people,
Yeah.
to see it grow. So tell me a little bit about how you got into entrepreneurship. Like, why are you doing it? What's going on?
Yeah. I think so. I graduated as a business major, and like most college students, I feel like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd always been interested in technology and in creating things. So I've done a lot of different random things, from like selling things on eBay. I'd probably sold, just buying and selling, and making some like profit on the margin, like over $100,000 of just stuff on
That's
eBay, a
cool.
lot of tech stuff.
Are
When
you
I was
still
a
doing it?
kid, what's that?
Are you still selling
No,
things?
it's I've never actually done the math, but I was probably making. I mean, for the time, I was probably making like $10 an hour in total, so not worth my
Yeah.
time now. But just different experiments like that. I also, when I was even younger, my dad owned a video game store, and I went to GameFAQs and would print out a bunch of like cheat codes and stuff like that, and then compiled my own little like books
Yeah.
and would sell them in the store, like really really ghetto books that I'd like cut in like just with
Yeah.
one of those giant cutter things. Um, just little things like that I did always throughout my life, trying to like be somewhat entrepreneurial, which I feel like I got through my dad to an extent.
Oh, cool.
Um,
So your dad's definitely an inspiration.
yeah, my dad hasn't worked for anyone since probably early to mid 20s. He's always been building companies himself.
Right on. That's
Um,
cool.
so he's created a lot of different companies. He's, like I mentioned, he started a video game company like back in the late 90s. It was sort of like a GameStop buy new used games. And before he actually started the store itself, he like literally sold video games out of his trunk, out of his car.
That's awesome.
Um, and this was in a time when video games were not like in Walmart. It wasn't like it is today, where they're
What
everywhere.
platform was this for?
This was like NES, and it was actually, at least in Eugene, Oregon, where he was selling it. They weren't, I guess, widely distributed, so you could sell at a high markup, and that's why he was able to just sell it literally at the back of his car. And he found an opportunity there to, start a business, start a video game business, and that's just one of his many businesses. So he's kind of, I feel like it's through him that I've taken a lot of inspiration and just, like motivation to start my own thing, or at least work in startups.
So why is it that you want to be involved with startups? They're not easy.
Yeah,
I mean, they take a lot of work. We all want to be our own
yeah,
boss, and we all want to
yep,
succeed, but it's not an easy thing. So why is it
yeah.
that you're involved?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people have different types of motivations. I think a large theme behind entrepreneurs and people wanting to start businesses is it's ultimately freedom. So there's freedom in the fact that you can possibly make money in a large sum of money so that you can be financially free, but it's also the freedom of being your own boss and not having to, you know, take someone's orders. And so I think a lot of those two things, just the element of freedom is kind of what drives, I think, entrepreneurs to do what they do. And you're right, it's logically it doesn't make sense for most people. Like statistically, you're going to fail. And I know a lot of people, entrepreneurs, that told me stories of, you know, really rough stories. One guy in particular, I won't mention his name, but you know, he basically had no money. He had to find his money for the day so he could eat, and you know, couch surfing on friends' couches and rough stuff like that. That's real entrepreneurship for many, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it can be really tough. Have you had any troubles on your journey so far?
I've been pretty fortunate actually. I've been very lucky. Out of college, I interned at a video game company, got hired on, did marketing, fell into product management, and that company ended up failing. But I moved to PlayHaven right before the failure, right before it went under. And PlayHaven's been. I was actually talking to Andy last week about sort of the PlayHaven story and journey, and I mentioned that I'm glad that it wasn't one of these the entire time, frankly. We've had a lot of ups and downs, especially in the early days when we had layoffs, and I had conversations with him where he told me that, Ryan, you may be laid off in the next month or
Wow.
so. Um, but it's through those ups and downs that you learn the most, I feel like. So if it was,
Yeah, I always tell people that a
yeah,
startup, is like a roller coaster ride. You have your highs and you have your
hmm
lows. And man, those lows can be really low. I mean,
mm,
we've had to lay people off here and we've had to look at the numbers and sometimes I'm like, I don't know where we're going, you know? It's hard.
yep, yep,
But at the end of the day, I love it. This is what it's all about because when you put in the effort, it pays off
yeah,
and you see it. And that's why I'm here. I mean, I love putting in the effort and seeing
yep,
it return.
yeah.
It's really rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, I've told this to many people. Much rather have the high highs, low lows than just the mediums or whatever you call it. I mean,
Yeah, it's worth it.
yeah, exactly.
So earlier you used this term called product management, and everybody has a
hmm
different meaning for what this means. So what is product management to you?
Yeah.
Is it something you can learn in school?
You know, it's so maybe 6 months before I became a product manager, I'd never heard of product management, which is kind of embarrassing to say. But it's one
Yeah.
of those things that isn't really taught in schools. I went to just traditional like 4-year college, University of Oregon, and they don't have any product management classes. They have, you know, entrepreneurial business classes, which I took, but no one really teaches, at least in most schools, product management in general. So I started off in marketing out of college, and then from there, my boss is actually the VP of product at the company, and he sort of you know, he noticed I was taking a strong interest in providing recommendations how we could improve the product or ways we could like directions we can go with the product. So he sort of noticed my natural, I guess, tendency to move in that direction, and then I eventually got promoted or moved into, you know, a formal product management role, and from there I sort of learned on the job. A lot of it was just getting thrown into the fire, and when I look back on, I guess, how I operated and the way I thought about product, it's again embarrassing. Um, but I think that's how a lot of product managers actually learn, is just really on the job. It's hard to do it any other way, I feel like. Um, but there are more classes out there, like General Assembly now has product management courses, and I'm sure some of the more top tier schools are more, I guess, probably focusing in that area and getting formal education.
Yeah. And now, is product management something you can learn or just something you gain over time? Is it for everybody?
I think you can learn anything. Well, not anything, but if you have basic competency in that general talent or skill set, which I think most people do have in product management, you can learn that. There are more people that are just have a natural instinct or product instinct, which that's the piece of product management that is the hardest thing I think to teach. But they're all different kinds of entrepreneurs, or rather product managers, I should say. Um, I have, well, so we recently, in the past like year or so, we've been interviewing a lot of product managers at PlayHaven and trying to bring more people on the team. And to be frank, I had more of a bias towards like the more instinctive product visionary types. And over time, as I've learned, you don't necessarily need everyone in product management to be a visionary. You need different types of people, especially having maybe a more visionary person versus a more data-driven person versus more tech person. It's good to have that diversity. So I think anyone can come from a different role and kind of adapt and learn product management. Just depends on kind of what the company structure is like and what they need.
Yeah. So you mentioned this term of what the product manager deals with called product, and I remember when I started, product
Mm-hmm.
was like kind of a vague term to me.
Mm-hmm.
So what to you is the definition of product?
Product. Yeah, it's a very vague term. Product is ultimately the solution you're trying to, well, it's the problem you're trying to solve and the solution you're providing to solve that problem. Um, so that's the most vague, I guess, kind of answer I could probably provide. Um, but it's hard to define definitively what product is, especially when it's so different company to company.
No, yeah, that's completely true, and it's up to you to really define what your product is.
Yeah.
Are entrepreneurs considered product managers? Like, if I were to start a company with a co-founder or something, do you need a product manager? Is this
Mhm.
something I want?
Every company needs a product manager, whether their title is product manager or not. You need someone to have that. They need to understand what are we building and what are we trying to solve. So many times, any successful company, whether they have a CEO, CTO, CCO, whatever, someone is wearing that product hat. Maybe it's a collaborative thing, but there's always someone that, unless they're a complete failure, someone has to be thinking about products. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, yeah, product management is important. I mean, you have to care about what it is you're building, and somebody has to be
Hmm.
aware of whether it's failing or succeeding. And that's the product manager's job to really kind of
Yeah.
look at
Yeah.
look at all the different aspects of your company and whether it's marketing or whatever, and pull it together.
Yeah.
Now, are there any? It's a diverse job. So, are there any tools you use to make it easier for you?
Yeah, it's we don't have any magic tools, unfortunately. We use right now Pivotal Tracker, which is worked really well for small teams, but as we've grown, it does not quite scale to multiple different teams. So we use that for just, bug tracking as well as like creating stories and sharing progress and things like that. So that's like one of the most, I guess, active tools. Of course, we also use standard things like Google Docs and things to share just various, I mean, for anything written that we want to share across the team. Um, but for me, I feel like the best tool, if you can, is communication, and that sounds maybe like an odd answer, but uh, it's a lot easier to communicate with words and face to face than it is to write a big Word document or an email. It's kind of ridiculous how much time we spend in email communicating when it's a lot more efficient and also effective just to communicate in person or over like Google Hangouts or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I completely agree. In fact, actually, at our office, we have all our tables together in the
mhm.
main floor. We probably
Yeah.
have about 25 or 30 people now. And
Hmm.
it's great because if I need to get a hold of somebody or say something, an idea or a problem, I just yell, hey, uh, something's wrong. And then
Yeah.
the other great part
Yeah.
about it is that everybody around us can hear exactly what it is we're saying.
Yep.
So the whole team is kind of in the know of what's going on. You're actually in the
Yeah.
conversation or not. So it's actually really nice, and we're going to try to keep it that way as long as we can. Do you guys have remote workers? Is that something you find that works?
Yeah, we do. It's remote working has always been a part of this company and the previous company. So we have an office of maybe 20 engineers in Portland, Oregon, and then we have the rest of the team here. So we have some engineers here as well, but also a lot of business folks. Um, so we've always been dealing with remote working, and it makes it more challenging, but it's not a killer. You just have to make it work. So I mean, we use a lot of like GoToMeeting and things like that. It would be easier if we were face to face. It's a lot easier to communicate with your body language and to whiteboard with one person or an engineer in person, but we make it work, just through other digital communication. So, yeah, it's challenging, but sometimes it's also been a great thing to have the team in Portland. It's very hard, as I'm sure you know, to hire engineers in San Francisco, but we have this huge talent of Portland folks that have been awesome.
That's great. I mean, yeah, we're down here in San Diego,
Hmm.
and it's working out just great. And then we also have a whole team up in Seattle that manages all of our systems, and it works out. Did I lose you?
Oh, you broke up just a little bit there for the last 10 seconds.
Uh, there. Yeah, yeah, the team's up in Seattle, and it's awesome. And we communicate
Hmm.
great. We do Skype or Google Hangouts for meetings, and usually we use emails, even though they can be kind of crazy
Hmm.
once you have about 500 people in a thread.
Yeah, yeah, especially when you get more than a few people on email thread. I mean, I've seen email threads go out of control. You have 20 people in a single email thread conversation. It's really absurdity. It is.
Yeah, no, there is complete space in the market right now for a better email solution. I mean, that's my product line, obviously
Mm.
thinking, um, but there's got to be something better for Teams than email.
Yeah,
You know,
actually, so let me give a plug to kind of an internet friend of mine, and I use this for some of my projects and things. It's called Dispatch, and it's effectively trying to eliminate the reply all, the pain of reply all, which everyone's familiar with. So it's really kind of a complementary tool to email. And so when you send out a dispatch message, it's essentially a form, and it's sent out to everyone, a single threaded kind of topic or comment. However, not everyone is no, you only receive an email notification for that first message, and only if you engage in the comments within that dispatch do you receive follow-on emails. So you don't get these big threads with a bunch of people on it that aren't necessary for the conversation.
cool, that's cool.
Yeah,
And you guys are using that right now?
we don't use it at PlayHaven, but I use it for Startup Edition and a couple other like just smaller communities of people that I organize.
Cool. So you just mentioned Startup Edition, and so maybe you could tell us a little bit about this. I love receiving Startup Edition in my inbox. Um,
Thanks.
so you working on this a lot lately. Is that all you do is work?
Yeah, I don't have much of a social life sometimes because I just I don't know find fun in other weird ways. Um, Yeah, so I've been writing a lot more lately in the past 6 months or so, and I found it well, just one enjoyable, but it's also been a really great way to connect to other people and just share my thoughts. Frankly, I wish more entrepreneurs specifically, would share. Well, everyone really, but entrepreneurs, I wish they would share their knowledge and share their stories and experiences more often. Um, there's so much knowledge that never gets shared. Like if I could share what's in my head to you and vice versa more efficiently or more effectively, that can have a huge impact, I think, on the way we think and our perspective. Um, so I'm not saying that I'm changing people's lives by any means or anything, but I found that at least with my writing, I'm able to connect with people and at least share my thoughts and hopefully get people to think in different ways.
Cool. So
Um,
you use writing as a way to connect with other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's so there's the social aspect and the influencer aspect, but then probably even more importantly is writing is a vehicle for me to really deeply think about something and really hone in on my thoughts as a pro.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I hate writing PRDs. As a
Yeah,
product manager, the the product requirements
who doesn't?
documents.
Yeah.
Yeah, but recently I've realized that the PRD
Hmm.
is important for the product manager. He needs to understand the problem, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Good
uh,
point.
by writing, you're having a conversation with yourself. It's your brain writing
Yeah.
exactly what it understands about a problem, and as you
Hmm.
iterate on it, you start to understand it better and better. So I've really learned to appreciate writing as a way to
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
problems and to solve them.
Yeah. You just said it more eloquent. Ironically, I can't even say the word eloquently than I could have.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. It's like when you spend enough time, when you spend an hour or two thinking about one specific thing, that
or
allows you to
paragraph
really,
or
yeah, paragraph
sentence.
by paragraph, you really analyze and so as a product person, I like to write a lot about products, and I use writing to write about. I wrote something about Snapchat. I've used Snapchat all the time, and I recently just really took some time to think about, okay, what makes Snapchat so engaging? Like, what are the hooks and the things of the product that make it so compelling? And I used writing as a way to kind of think about it that way.
Cool. So how did Startup Edition start? Why was this something that you decided to start doing?
Yeah, it actually came about through a couple tweets. So my friend Nathan Bashad mentioned a tweet. He said, Daniel Burka and Cap, I forget his last name, but he's at Etsy. They both wrote this blog post that was basically on the same exact topic, and Nathan like mentioned this on Twitter, and I said, trying to remember what I said, is something like, oh, we should like organize people to do this more often or something. And then he's like, yeah, we should. And then I said, okay, let's do it. So that's honestly how Startup Edition came about. So it was between a conversation between me and Nathan, and so we just said, okay, let's see if we can get a few entrepreneurs to write about a specific question. And it was first called questionclub.co, which I think might still be online. And we eventually decided that wasn't really a great name. But we got a few cool entrepreneurs to write about a specific topic and then link to each other. And then that kind of snowballed into, just recruiting more entrepreneurs that I respected and also who I knew had good opinions. And so we're now up to maybe 50 different contributors, and they just write once a week. Every Tuesday morning, we send out a post that might be on some different topic on marketing or product or hiring or culture, anything startup related. And the goal really is to just, again, encourage people to write, these entrepreneurs to share their knowledge, and then also provide hopefully some insight into startups and some knowledge for either existing startup people or people that are just very fascinated with startups and want to dive into that realm themselves.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, I love learning from all the people that have something great to say. Did you create Startup Edition because you couldn't find what you were looking for out there? Was it something you needed to create?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of content out there actually. That's one thing I've been thinking about is there's nothing special about Startup Edition really. The only unique thing is that it's a group of curated entrepreneurs who are writing about one specific topic. I don't think it's the most novel thing at all, and it's really an experiment to see where it goes. It's been naturally growing. Over the past maybe 3 weeks, it's grown 3x in terms of subscriber base. So it's growing without me putting any effort into it. And the contributors are enjoying it because it kind of creates not only a platform but more of like a support group, so that they know, okay, when I write this, I have some audience, and I also have this group of people supporting me, writing along with me, which I think is where most of the value in Startup Edition has come from so far.
No, yeah, you are completely onto something here because when I write something, I want somebody to read it. So it's great to be able to know that you're going to have people reading and reflecting on your thoughts. You can almost do this in other markets. You're kind of onto something here. I think you could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. It's you could take this in. Startup is a great, I guess, niche just to go after first with this type of approach. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of other people that love different things. Let's just say gardening. There's a group of people that love gardening and they love to share their gardening tips, and maybe creating a support group of people to share their knowledge around that specific topic would be a possibility. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually learned from you. There's that website called what's it called? Write with me, or Help Me Write.
Yeah, Help Me Write.
Yeah, Help Me Write.
Yeah.
And it's cool because you know that people are going to support you when you write something. They're actually going to read. Is that something that you're constantly using or actively supporting?
I am. I like it a lot. It's actually, so John Gold was one of the first contributors of Startup Edition. Nathan knew him and recruited him and said, hey, you should write. And I stumbled across Help Me Write through him. So he's in London. He's at Makeshift, and they do a lot of really just cool prototypes and products. They're always building, and it's actually really incredible how fast they can move. And yeah, Help Me Write is one of those products. So it's, for those that don't know, it's a really small community right now, but I hope it grows. It's essentially a place where you can share your blog post ideas, things you want to write about, to the community, and then the community can say, oh yeah, I want to read that, and they click a button to basically follow that. Once they do that, they're shown as your supporter, and you can message them, or when the piece is complete, you can send it out to the entire audience and say, here's the post, it's been written. So I find it a good way to, one, get like some validation for the idea. Does anybody really care about this blog post idea, or is it just me? The other is to also have that support group. So while you're writing it, you have a certain number of people interested in your topic, in what you're writing. Now, since it is small, you don't have a huge audience right now, but I do have, right now I'm actually working on one post that has like 70 people that express interest in reading it,
Wow,
which is
cool.
Which is
What's
kind
that
of,
post called?
I'm calling it Blog First Startups. So it's kind of a play off of an Email First Startups post I did a while back, but it's just essentially, taking a look at some examples of how blogs have been used to validate a startup idea and effectively launch and market a startup before it's actually released the product itself.
That's a cool idea. Yeah, use your blog. I mean, you hear people talk about using buy Google AdWords or put up a landing page
Yeah,
on
yeah,
whatever your product's about and see if people land and get any kind of interest.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there are a couple cool examples. So hopefully I'll publish in the next week or two. But yeah, I won't tease it anymore.
So every week you have to decide what you're going to write about. Are there any particular topics that have really had great engagement for Startup Edition?
Hmm. It's hard to say because as the readership grows, it just naturally each week looks more engaging or more interesting. So it's hard to compare apples to apples. You know, trying to think. The one that was on pricing, how do you choose a pricing model, got a lot of attention just because it's kind of one of those topics that doesn't seem to get a lot of attention, but has such a huge impact in a startup. Like the whether you're doing a subscription-based pricing or just like what is the price of your product. Changing the price is sometimes the highest ROI, the biggest impact you can have to your bottom line with the least amount of effort. But there's no science, of course, to choosing what your price should be. Um,
Yeah, and it's also kind of scary because you don't want to scare customers off.
exactly. Yeah. And actually, just side note is the guys at Buffer. This wasn't part of the startup edition, but they have an interesting story where they will literally just play with pricing. They'll just change pricing from one day to the next. I don't know if they still do this, but they used to, and just see how users react. In worst case scenario, someone notices that it went up, and then they say, "Hey, it was $5 last week. Why?" And maybe you can just accommodate that, but why not play with pricing? It's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, no, there's some really interesting things you can do now. Because freemium model has basically taken over the marketplace for all apps or web apps.
hmm
So you've got Startup Edition. You're working at PlayHaven. What's kind of next for you? What's the big thing that you want to do? Like, what's the big change that you're after with what you're doing in life?
Yeah, I'm excited at PlayHaven. We're growing up to I think almost 90 or so right now. So things are going really well. We have some really cool products coming out and things that we can't yet announce. Actually, next week is GDC, which we'll have some announcements then, which cut just a couple days. So yeah, PlayHaven's exciting. Startup Edition honestly is again it's an experiment for me. It doesn't take much time out of my day, so just doing that on the side. Writing is for the foreseeable future going to be part of my daily routine. I usually do it on the weekends. Go to the coffee shop and kind of jot down my ideas.
How
So I
much
really
time do
enjoy
you spend
that.
writing?
How much time do I spend writing?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. It can vary from 4 hours to 8 hours a week, something like that. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have other people read what you're writing or like proofread before you put it out?
It's so I'll write it, and I do share some of my drafts either with the Startup Edition crew or another community of bloggers, or just individually to people that are experts in what I'm writing about. So I actually do get a lot of feedback from people even more recently, and I use a tool called Draft for that. Have you heard of it before?
I don't think I have. What is it?
Yeah, it's Nathan. I don't know how to say his last name. Contney, I think. It's his project, and I've been using it religiously. And it's basically a tool to just to write and then share your draft with others, and they can make comments. He describes it as like GitHub for writing, so they can
Very
write
cool.
their recommendations, and then you can merge their changes in effectively, or they can have comments and things like that. And it's really helpful because it one makes me a better writer as other people get their eyes on it and provide suggestions, but it also allows them to pick holes in my ideas. And that's especially useful online because everyone else is going to poke many holes in your ideas. So hopefully you can do that to a smaller group of people and not the internet. So I would really recommend if you ever get into writing to find someone that you trust and respect and share your writing with them and get feedback before posting.
Yeah, because God knows what you're going to hear about from hackers.
Yes, yeah, I know. I've gotten those before.
So
hmm
how do you go about building your audience? We all have something that wants to be read. So how do you get people to read what you're writing yourself on your site?
Yeah, so I've been building an email list maybe the past 3 months or so, just a personal email list, and I sometimes will include a call to action at the bottom of my post saying, "Hey, subscribe for more." On my blog, you'll see like a subscribe text field to enter your email. So that's useful because I feel like, well, one, you may get a huge spike in traffic. Let's say you do hit Hacker News and you have 20,000 page views for some posts. That's great, but ideally you're converting that into long-term sustained traffic, and email is one of the best ways to do that. Of course, there's also Twitter, so building some Twitter following is helpful. But for me, I put everything on my own blog, either post there first or post there later. But I also use Medium, I'm on Subtle, and not so much on Core. I used to use Core a little bit. Frankly, I do distribute and cross post across many different channels, and I know a lot of people look down on that. But frankly, I don't think it matters. Like if your content,
yeah, you just want people reading your stuff.
yeah, if your content is good, or if people value it, and you're posting it to communities that like your content, then why should it matter if it's posted in multiple channels? And then more recently, I've been doing a little bit more guest posting. I'm hopefully, well, I had one guest post for the first time on PandoDaily, which is really fun and exciting, and hoping to do more of those. And then I've done just others.
Phil of Philz Coffee?
Yeah.
Cool. Did you get a chance to go meet
Yeah,
with
that
him
was
yet?
fun. I did, yeah. I did a couple weeks ago. He's a very interesting guy, really cool storyteller.
Right on. I was going to tell you, if you hadn't talked to him yet, to bring one down here to San Diego.
Yes, they're going to LA next. Apparently, they're expanding soon.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, might be worth the drive. Oh, and one more. I feel like I'm shouting out to all the products I use, but
That's fine.
there's
That's what we're here for.
I use Quib a lot as well. Are you familiar with Quib?
Yeah, actually, right before we started talking, I just got approved to start posting stuff there.
Oh, nice. So I've been on Quib for a year, actually. It's just, I can't believe it's been that long. For those that don't know, Quib is just sort of a curated private community of sorts of people in tech and startups, and it's kind of like Twitter in the fact that you just share links. It is a Twitter follower model. You can follow other people, but it's really about sharing links related to what you're working on in startups or in technology. And what makes it great is the product itself isn't great. It's basically a forum or a Twitter feed, but it's the community that makes it awesome. There's a lot of really successful entrepreneurs, founders, and interesting people that have really good insights and things, and they communicate and they engage in the community around these pieces of content. So today, actually, I went to my third Quib brunch. So Sandy, the founder, has been doing these brunches, and there are about 30 or 40 of us, and just had fascinating conversation. So it's taking kind of that online experience of awesome conversation. Now they're doing more offline stuff, which I'm excited about. So the reason why I mention Quib is that I also post my articles. Not all of them, only if they're relevant, I'll post them to Quib as well. And even though that's not a huge audience, the audience is, I don't want to say they're more important or anything, but they're more influential. They're more of the target audience for my type of content.
Right, that's the audience that you want feedback from directly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm excited to be on Quib. So obviously you seem to know a lot about this industry, like the startups and tech scene. Are there any specific websites or apps you use to find great content to read? Anything that you would suggest to us?
Yeah, good question. I read a lot of blogs, less so books, which I want to do more of. But I read a lot of content online just because it's you get a lot of diverse opinion and a lot of good information there. So I use Pocket a lot. Another shout out to another product I use.
Yeah, I use Pocket all the time too.
Yeah, I use it religiously. So I get a lot of value from content that people are writing, which is why I'm encouraging Startup Edition and other people to write. And then a lot of it, of course, like working at PlayHaven, working on Startup Edition, there are things that I learned just by doing stuff like that. And then also meeting, one benefit of being in San Francisco is you get to meet a lot of awesome people. And so I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of experienced people and understand and learn from them directly. And that's the best way to learn sometimes. And in a half an hour, 1 hour coffee meeting, you can learn a lot more than you will the entire day at your job sometimes, depending on where you're working. So I think, yeah, it's reading, doing, I guess writing, and meeting people is how I learn. Yeah, and honestly, if I was doing a startup and I knew what I was trying to achieve, there now being in San Francisco and having somewhat of a network, there are people that have done similar things or have expertise in, let's say, marketing or in engineering or product or whatever it is, and I know that I can reach out to them and I can get some very valuable feedback, and that half an hour meeting or that 15-minute call could have such high ROI and benefit. And I don't think enough people take advantage of just literally talking to people.
No,
They try and figure it out
yeah, no, I
themselves.
completely agree. Like too many of us live on our own bubble and think that our own ideas are ideal and are the best, but we don't really get feedback from others to test our own ideas. So,
Hmm.
but what if I lived in like Wichita, Kansas, and I just need feedback? Do you just email somebody and say, "Hey, what do you think?"
Not necessarily. I wouldn't do that. I mean, writing has enabled me to build connections more easily.
So you need some kind of clout to get feedback.
Well, it's that helps to a degree, but I wouldn't say I have like massive clout by any means. But it's really reciprocating. So following and engaging and genuinely having like an authentic interest in what these people are doing is how you start building connections with them. So I've built a lot of those through Quib to an extent. Just engaging around content with these people. Um, I'm even in like some message me groups with some uh, very experienced entrepreneurs, and through that, it's actually spawned like real relationships with those people. So it's really just being authentic and real and showing interest in them. Now, writing also helps a lot because then people feel like they know you without meeting you to an extent. I ran across people in San Francisco that have either recognized me through writing or just read one of my posts, and they feel like they feel compelled to meet or talk to me, and they feel like um, they not that they know me, but they at least like are comfortable talking to me now that they kind of read my words. And I think there's something really powerful about writing that enables people to really change perspective of what they think about people.
Yeah, I mean that's 100% the reason why we're talking today.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So we're kind of running out of time here, but just before we end, I want to ask, where are you getting your inspiration for your ideas to do what you're doing in life? What inspires you to want to
Hmm.
write?
Um, by ideas, I assume you mean startup ideas,
Yeah,
things like
startup
that, product
ideas.
ideas.
Yeah, product ideas.
Yeah.
We only have so much time on this earth,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so what inspires you to want to do this? Why do you want to share what's in your mind with other people? Um, why is this something that you want to see as a reality in this world? The ability for others to connect via
Right.
writing,
Right.
the ability for people to have ideas, to write them down and to share them with people and to really inspire people, you know? Uh,
Yeah.
if there's people out there that they want to turn their ideas into reality, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a deep question. It's something I should think about. Honestly, it's for me, it's just a natural passion to build or to create. Writing is creation. Being a product manager is creation. And just like the stories I told you earlier before when I was creating these little cheat books and things like that, that's creation. So I've always had just this natural like passion to do that kind of thing. So if you were, I guess, to narrow it in on like a startup idea or something like that, for me, and this is cliche, but it's worth saying again, um, making sure you're passionate about what you're trying to build, like truly passionate about it, and it's something that you can dedicate 4+ years of your life to, is what like the biggest piece of advice I think I'd give anyone, because as you know, I've done experiments, I've done landing page experiments, and like these things, it's like, okay, I'm gonna create this laundry service. Like I actually did this. And there's a startup that recently got announced that had this similar idea. It's basically Uber for laundry. It's like, okay, people in San Francisco, they don't have like a washer and dryer for their laundry. Like, wouldn't it be great if they could just pick it up and have it like delivered and all that stuff? So I created a landing page, and then I was like, oh, I can see how many like email signups I get, see if there's interest. And then I realized before I even like marketed, I'm like, even if this takes off, do I want to do a laundry delivery service? Like, really, do I want to do that? No, I don't. Even if I could be like like extremely rich off this idea. It's not something I want to do. It's not something I'm passionate about. So that's the biggest piece of advice: is like make sure whatever you're doing is something that you're passionate about.
I completely agree with you. That's awesome advice, Ryan. You've really shown us that writing is really important to share your thoughts, to inspire other people. And I think it's important, especially as an individual who wants to turn their ideas into
Yeah.
reality, that they throw them out there to people to let them hear them, and you can kind of test them. You get feedback, and it really allows you to kind of grow an audience.
hmm Yeah, that reminds me of a quote that Heaton Shaw said in another uh, podcast interview. It was I don't know the exact words that he used, but it was his advice was to build an audience before you build a startup or before you build a product, and that's what they did to an extent, I believe, with like Kissmetrics and their blogging and their writing. Uh, that's a great way to at least, if you don't know what you want to do today, at least start building an audience and a following, and also refine your own ideas while doing so.
Well, Ryan, it was a complete pleasure talking to you.
Cool, yeah, great chat. I always just like chatting about this stuff, so
Great.
anytime.
Yeah, hopefully you can swing by here in San Diego and see us someday.
Yeah, hopefully. Let me know.
Great. All right, man. Take care.
See you, Corey.
Are you a reality maker, know somebody that is, or want to sponsor this show? Visit my website, coreyguin.com, to learn more.